Following program contains language and subject matter that you may consider unsuitable for children. Parental discretion is advised.
Greetings from His Highness the Jackal.
The Jackal.
I'm going to pass the reins to Mr. Jackal, the new king of radio.
I think Jackal's Latino, I'm not sure, but he'll give it to you, Jeff.
The Jackal.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Inside the Jackal's Head, right here live again on psn-radio.com, and of course the world famous SoFlo Radio and Global Enlightenment Radio Network. With me now is the gentleman of the hour, the person who I said earlier on the show, if you were listening, that they should one day erect a statue of him, because he is truly a pioneer in the world of ufology and the world against the embargo that's been taking place for decades and decades and decades now when it comes to the truth of UFOs. The one and only, a person I call a dear friend for over a decade now, Mr. Stephen Bassett. Thank you so much for being on the show live with me here tonight.
Angel, I have some colleagues who'll get statues before I do, I assure you.
You're well deserving, my friend. I mean, I've known you for a long time now, and I tell you, you're one of the people that got me really into the movement early on, into ufology, because I was following what you were doing. And I'm like, man, this is really the most important question of our society and our planet. Are we alone? What are they hiding from us? What is the truth? And I think, with what we've gone through this year with COVID and everything, I think we're getting closer and closer to that. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, what we're going to talk about, I want to ask you how you've been with the lockdown and everything that we're facing this year.
I must confess that all of us have had a rough time. I know, except for the very wealthy. God bless their hearts. The rest of us have had a rough time, and mine is not. I think mine has been better than most, but I have to confess that my cognitive matrix is pretty pixelated right now. I'm not as sharp as I was 9 months ago, so you're going to have to bear with me.
Well, it happens to the best of us. I'm 42, about to be 43, and I feel like I'm 85 because of my lupus, and sometimes the mind wanders. So I'm getting it early, so I completely understand, believe me.
Yeah, I'm in my 195th day of strong isolation. And by that I mean no windows, but whatever. I'll try to do my best, but if I screw up, hey, it's the pandemic's fault. In fact, anything that goes wrong is the pandemic's fault. That's the way we should play this. Yeah,
no, it's funny because I had a friend of mine who passed away of a heart attack earlier this year, when there was the middle of the pandemic, and initially they tried to blame it on COVID, and then it turned out it was a heart attack. It had nothing to do with COVID. I think a lot of that stuff is being blamed on purpose to inflate numbers and keep us all in fear and keep us locked in. There's a lot of fear mongering going on right now, and they're manipulating this disease into something a lot worse than I think it might be. Now, I've had 13 friends of mine that have come down legit, supposedly with COVID. Now one have died, Stephen.
Good.
So, including my father, his girlfriend, my uncle, my cousin, and my uncle's wife.
I hear you.
And so,
it's a big country. It's a big country, Angel.
Yeah.
330 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, that's a small percentage of the total people. However, the 200,000 families of the people that have died don't quite see it that way.
Well, no, that's true, but how many of that is actually because of COVID? That's the big thing. That's where I'm getting at, And remember, we had what was it recently? Biden said that 6,000 members of the military died, and it was actually 7. Yeah, it was 7 people. So, there's a lot of misquotes and misinformation in the media, which you know about misinformation and the media lying and manipulating. This is right up what we've been talking about for a decade plus now. With the truth embargo and how the media just completely fabricates the facts and lies about it. This is nothing new, and now it's funny because Trump said it, I think, as a joke when he ran about draining the swamp, and it's like they're draining themselves, Stephen, at this point, and the swamp includes a lot of people that have kept this secret. And that's why I think the Pentagon came clean with some of the footage, legitimizing that they're real, UFOs or aerial phenomena. What is it? They changed the name now. Now it's not UFO anymore. They're changing the language. But a
I
lot
helped.
of
I
stuff,
helped with that, Angel. I've played a strong
yeah,
part of changing the language for 20 years now.
I
It's not
know, I
easy,
know. They're
but it's
following
important.
your footsteps. Exactly. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we're all in this. Yeah, but not totally. But again, a lot of people have worked to change the language because in activism, it's extremely important to be accurate about what you want and what and how you're going to draw the people together. And this happens all the time. And so, I mean, whatever movement you want to look at, whether it's civil rights, gay rights, anti-war movement, and there are two examples right now which stick out to me. And as an activist, I'm responding as an activist. Okay, I'm not trying to get into the weeds on this, but a phrase emerged out of the recent activism called Black Lives Matter. All right. Now the problem with that is that does not state what they're trying to say. It's catchy, and it's got a nice ring to it, but it's not accurate. The accurate phrase, the proper phrase, is Black Lives Matter 2. I was thinking about putting a poster together, Black Lives Matter number 2. And people say, well, what's the difference? The difference is a lot. Because by saying Black Lives Matter 2, you eliminate a lot of the basis by which people that are, for whatever reason, opposed to these ideas can attack you. All right, so that's one. And then another one is defund the police. That's not what they mean, but it sounds good. It's clever, right? It's got some pizzazz to it. That's not what they mean. They mean reform the police, restructure the police. And so these are two classic cases of inaccurate language, which is severely damaging, I think, some important activism. And we've had the same problem in the ET-UAP issue as well. And, I've done what I can to try to help them.
No, definitely. You like I said, you've been one of the pioneers. I do find it kind of crazy when I hear rhetoric like abolish the police. In fact, there's a young lady named Lilith Sinclair who was in Portland, one of the main members of Antifa, and she's been on the record. It's on YouTube. She's she's one of the charting members down in Portland, and she said that her goal and the goal of this group is not just to reform the police or the government, it's to abolish the United States, abolish the police. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. I mean,
Well, I can assure you that within the community that wants to see justice, wants to see people treated fairly, for every person in the activist movement or any subset of that activist movement that says, I want to abolish the police, there's 1,000 people in the same movement that don't want that. What they want is to reform the police.
Correct.
And so, but you see, saying to reform the police is accurate, but it doesn't quite get the attention. That's why activists tend to say extreme things. The activist is always trying to get the attention because you can't make progress if people don't pay attention to you. So you want the media to listen, you want public to pay attention. And so you're constantly under a certain pressure to say something radical, okay? Say something outrageous. And that way people will pay attention. Of course, you don't factor into the account that you're not reflecting the totality of the movement and you're giving the opposition easy ammunition. Hey, that has been true of every activist movement there ever was, I assure you. And so what can I say? All the activists can do, the ones that understand this, is to convey information well, to not get too extreme, and hopefully the movement will succeed. But I encourage people to be careful here. You know, there's an idea that came to my mind the other day. When I was a kid, and I know you did this. Well, I don't know if you were ever lived up north much. When I was a kid, 8, 9, 10, we would go out in the winter. We make snow forts, and we get behind these little snow forts, right? And you throw snowballs at each other. It's very cool. Well, that was 50 years ago. Oh my God, that was 60 years ago. Okay.
Kind of dating yourself there a little bit, Stephen.
So here we are today. You know what people are doing? They're creating anonymous handles on the internet, which are like snow forts, and they stay behind those and they throw anecdotes at each other. If you get my meaning.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, That's one subject. Shall we get into the weeds here? I mean, get out of the weeds and into the ET stuff, man. What's going on? What do you need?
No, it's always fun to hear thoughts of folks like yourself within a certain group when it comes to talking about stuff that's outside the box for what you normally speak about, because it really shows that you are aware of everything that's happening in the world, not just in the world of UFOs, yeah, you have to be.
I have to be. So some of the researchers that are digging into aspects of this field, they don't. I think many don't have the inclination and don't have the time to follow all of the political developments going on. But I'm a political activist, and the issue is global, massive, and so I need to have a pretty good idea almost everything that's going on to some degree, because everything that's going on one way or another is going to be impacted by the outcomes of this movement.
Where do you think we stand now when it comes to the actual disclosure process that we've made over the last, really 20 plus 30 years, and especially since you've been involved, now moving in 2020, 2021 coming up in a few months? What do you think the process is, or the progress that we've made?
That's the question I needed to hear. Look, here's where things are now. The disclosure movement is advanced dramatically in the last 3 years. And the overwhelming reason for that is the emergence of the To the Stars Academy. They are leading the movement now. They are the point of the spear, if you like those kind of analogies. They're carrying the ball. And it will be the TTSA that takes the ball over the end zone, gets to spike the ball, and then hold up the trophy after the game. That's the way it's going to be. Now, the plan was not for this to stretch out for 4 years. That wasn't the plan, but that's the way it worked out. So now it will be 3 years this month that the To the Stars Academy suddenly went public. And really, there'd been almost very little indication of it. The only thing we had prior to the launch on October 11th, 2017, was an interview by George Knapp of Tom DeLonge in 2016, March. And it gave us some idea something was going on, no particulars really. And then there was another indication something was going on when the WikiLeaks emails were released in going into the last days of the election in 2016. And we learned of the substantial amount of interaction between Tom DeLonge and a few members of the people he was working with inside and John Podesta. That was it. Okay. And then the election was held and nothing happened. Basically, nothing happened. All went silent. And it would be 11 months before they made the decision to go ahead with what they had planned to do in November, December of 2016. So they launched in 2017. And since then, they are driving the process, literally driving the process. And while it has been a rough going, because it's been a very tumultuous 3 years, they have accomplished a great deal. And as a result, I'm pretty sure that we're in the last months of the truth embargo. I have very strong confidence in that. And I kind of know how things are going to play out next year. Right? But for right now, what has happened is that the TTSA, let me back up here because this is important. When the TTSA was formed, that was important. That was a big deal. However, when as they had planned to do from the beginning, of course, everything that happened was pretty much planned in advance. Only the timing got screwed up. When they delivered the stories, the information, including the gun camera footage, to the New York Times, and when the New York Times, after extensively vetting that information, published the 2 front-page articles on December 16, 2017, the disclosure movement, which at that point was, I feel the movement really got underway in 2000, but technically it goes back forever. But the disclosure movement crossed the Rubicon. At that point, there was no going back. There was going to be no retrenchment per se. We might slow down, but we were not going to go back. And in fact, the die was cast. In fact, disclosure at that point was virtually inevitable. Well, it's always been inevitable, but it was going to be soon. All right. But again, there were a lot of circumstances that stretched it out. But they proceeded, I think, on the same path that they had planned, it just on a much slower pace. And so you got the New York Times articles. Meanwhile, they'd done an extensive amount of filming and easily sold, if they weren't approached directly, a show to the History Channel, which was going to be a key part of their strategy. They chose the History Channel, I think, for very good reasons. For one, they'd do it. Secondly, it was decent, credible. There's a lot of channels a lot less credible than History. And of course, Ancient Aliens had of followers. And so it was just about the right level of seriousness to get the job done. And so they launched.
And it's not like the Sci-Fi Channel; it's the History Channel, which gives a little bit more legitimate feel to it, because it's, you know, when you start putting this thing into context, this is going to become part of our history. So it is
history. It's history. The Sci-Fi Channel is mostly, you know, fiction. Okay.
Yeah.
So they launched the Unidentified series, and as you know, there were 2 seasons, all this year. All right. And they were first was 6 episodes and then 8 episodes, and they carefully took the subject that they had introduced to the New York Times and elaborated on it, but mostly kept reintroducing it to the general public, right? And they started off, of course, with the Nimitz Case, which has always been the centerpiece of this from the beginning, with an emphasis on the witnesses, the pilots, all that good stuff. They got that out, and pretty much, by and large, the first 6 seasons, with the exception of the first season, with the exception of the 6th episode, was pretty much all about the Nimitz Case, maybe the Roosevelt case to a degree, and witnesses, military witnesses coming forward that they showed. Okay. Correct. Then they took a hiatus for a number of months, and then had the 2nd season. Now, in between the first season, the end of the first season of Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation, and the 2nd season, they were getting, as planned, approaches from military witnesses, lots of them. Tom DeLonge alluded to something like 1,500 contacts, of which I imagine a very sizable number were military people. Why? Because the effect of the New York Times article and the effect of the Unidentified show, which brought them those witnesses into play again, and some that were not in the article, they lowered the bar dramatically on witnesses coming forward, military witnesses. They lowered it lower than it's ever been, because all of these witnesses were talking, and they were in the New York Times, and they're on the History Channel. Are they getting harassed? Are they getting fired? No, nothing was happening to them, right? And so there's thousands of people out there in the U.S. military, retired or active, who have direct knowledge of this phenomena, to one degree or another, who remain silent because, well, that's the wise choice. However, the bar got dropped and they started coming out. And they were collecting those new accounts behind the scenes for months. And then they launched the 2nd series. And in the 2nd series, what did they do? They brought out more witnesses. They selected a number of these witnesses and they brought them out with more stories. It weren't about the Nimitz case. There were other cases. Okay, good. Now, a couple of them requested to be in silhouette, but still more, and they're all military witnesses, but everything's military, which is the strategy, right? There's plenty of civilian stuff out there, but that doesn't fit their agenda.
Right.
So that was very powerful. But in between the 2 shows, actually not in between the 2 shows, but because of the New York Times article, and in general, the existence of the TTSA, it triggered a cascade of responses. Right? Some self-serving, some intended to be helpful, some public relations, from very significant entities. Because again, the Rubicon had been crossed. And so a whole lot of people inside government knew that, well, the Exodus was heading for the Promised Land, and you could either get into that exodus or you could stay on the outside and see how it went. And so what happened was, and it's important to note that most of the responses came from the Navy. Now, this is not an accident. The TTSA made the decision to launch their fundamental initiative with the New York Times based on Navy jet gun camera footage. One major case, the Nimitz case, and another significant case that's closer in time, 2014, the Roosevelt case. All aircraft carriers, all pilots. And so basically the Navy was at the very center of these articles. And of course, the gun camera footage was the first ever released by the U.S. government or any government in the world. That was a milestone that most citizens wouldn't understand. Hey, let's some film. Okay, great, yeah, cool. They have no idea the significance. Most people. Okay.
Yeah.
And so guess what? The New York Times, of course, put that up on their website. And as you know, those gun camera clips, particularly the Tic Tac, it's all over the world. You can find it on tens of thousands of sites. How many millions of people have seen that gun camera footage? I cannot imagine, but it's a big deal. And so the Navy was kind of in an embarrassing position. Because I don't think they sent an email to the Navy and told them what they were going to do ahead of time. They didn't send an email to anybody. They couldn't do that. Because if they had notified a number of entities with a number of services and agencies and so forth in the government, hey, here's what our plans are. No, there would have been a whole lot of pushback. Like, are you out of your mind? You can't do that. So they just did it. And they even surprised the front office of the Pentagon, their PR office. They didn't know what was going on. So when they got approached, it was like, we don't know. So look. So
like busted with their hands on the meat. Like, there's no way they could run.
So what did the Navy learn when those articles appeared in the New York Times? Well, that the incident of 2004 with the Nimitz aircraft carrier group, which they'd known about obviously for 13 years, has just been outed. And they're sitting there holding the bag. In other words, we didn't say anything. We suppressed the testimony. And now everybody knows, boy, is this awkward. And so they needed to respond. They needed to get on board. Public relations. So they did a number of things. They announced that they were reviewing the protocols for sightings and stuff and what the pilots can do. Then they announced that they've set up an actual system for reports again. Then they acknowledged that the gun camera footage was legit. It was significant. And they did a couple of other things, very significant. So this is the Navy just sort of getting on board, saying, yeah, hey, look, you understand national security, but yeah, it's out, so let's talk about it. Then the Army jumped in and cut this cooperative research deal with TTSA, which just really doesn't mean much of anything. And it had to do with metamaterials. And frankly, it was no big deal. These are not a big deal. But what it accomplished is it showed that the Army, by doing that, was saying this is a credible group. Okay. Now, the Army wasn't really in a bad position. There was nothing about the Army on the releases from TTSA to the New York Times. But nevertheless, the Army wanted to get on board. So they did that. The Air Force, it's noted, has done nothing. It's like, I know nothing. We know nothing. But the Air Force did. Okay. So,
the good old hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil.
Now, the other thing that was going on at the time that really prior to the shows being aired, right? So this would have started, I think, in 2018. Exactly when, I don't know. But this was all behind the scenes. Hush, hush. So they're about to air the shows, but while that's put together and it's going to air on History Channel, they start going up to the Hill for private briefings. Now, I didn't know this until later. And they were using the pilots primarily. We don't know exactly who briefed who and when, but we know that they were having private briefings off the record, basically, no press conferences, no statements are going to come from the members of Congress. To basically bring them up to speed on, I think you could basically say, the Nimitz case and the related stuff. How far they went beyond that, don't know, but they were giving these briefings. Now, it's notable that, we know that later we learned that they've given a lot of briefings. Tom DeLonge has indicated there's been quite a few, all right? And we know that they briefed both Republicans and Democrats. A couple of the people that were briefed did mention they were briefed, which is not a severe violation of the understanding, but they said so. Mark Warner was notable. Democrat, Senate Intelligence. Mark Walker was said something. He was Republican, House of Representatives. Senator Shaheen mentioned something. So we knew they were having brief. We didn't know how many. Turns out it was a lot. And because they were briefing both Democrats and Republicans, naturally, one of those Republican committee chairs or committee members notified the White House that we got a briefing about this interesting stuff. And so eventually they gave a briefing to the president. We believe it was the pilots. We don't know how many pilots were there. We don't know if Chris Mellon, who's leading the congressional approach, was there, but the president was briefed, and that's been confirmed. When I learned about that, that's when I made the decision I had to relocate back to Washington, whatever the hell it took. Like, when it comes to me, let me tell you, everything is difficult, right?
You have to go back
it's
to
not like,
those-
oh yeah, I need to get back to my Washington apartment, okay? I need to get back there. I get a first-class flight, cruise on back. It's no, it's not like that at all. So that's when I realized we are really moving forward quickly. I have got to get back because the political process is heating up. So I relocated back and set up an office in the National Press Building. Okay, so that was going on, all right? And then they held a second series. They held more interviews came out. And Tom DeLonge alluded to the fact that nearly 1,500 contacts had come to bear. And so by then, I had a pretty good idea where things were going. But I should say that if all of the, and I'm watching this whole thing, I have followed this as closely as anybody in the world. And I'm not saying I got as deep into it as say in certain aspects of it. In other words, I look at the big picture. Like Richard has plunged deep into certain aspects of it, Richard Dolan. But in terms of the larger picture, no one's followed. I have logged in virtually every mainstream article on the TTSA and related developments from TTSA activities on my print media archive on my website. It's now approaching 700 articles. I have a page devoted to with graphic links to all of the video statements they've made and all of the news video clips regarding the TTSA, many of which included interviews of TTSA people and so forth. There's about 150 of those on my website. So I've been following this extremely closely. And so as that series is heading toward the history series is heading toward the eighth and final episode, I realized, okay, I know where things are going. But then I got a gift, all right? Because I've supported the TTSA from the beginning. Only one time have I come publicly out with some reservations. Because the one thing that I was concerned about in their agenda, their plan, was that, in my view, the threat emphasis was, the needle was too far to the right, okay? Too far. Initially, they were talking potential threat, which is perfectly appropriate. Believe me, it's a potential threat. But then it was more threat. And then it started turning up in the first series. The threat was getting manifest there. Though there were some caveats, there were some statements which would mitigate that. But nevertheless, from the standpoint of the public, that's what they were hearing, threat. Now, while I was concerned about
how much is that just like, you think, fear mongering, or do you think that's actually legit threat?
No, it's not fear mongering. It is legit, and it's legit in this way. In order to achieve the goal that they are seeking, which they're going to get, the threat aspect of the ET issue was essential. If even if you are a bunch of guys that used to work at the DOD and the CIA and the skunk works and so forth, and your heavy duty credentials and huge gravitas, even if you're that doesn't mean that the journalists are going to flock to your door. It doesn't mean that the committee chairs on the Hill are going to just open their doors. But if you cast this in the national security mode, everyone understands that there's a legitimate national security implication to this. Hell, the nuclear weapons tampering, which is they've emphasized as well, is no-brainer. You're going to get their attention. You're going to get the coverage, and you're going to get the committee hearings you're going to get the committee meetings on the Hill. And so that was essential to that. I get it. It's okay. But how far are you going to push it, particularly once you get what you want? Okay, so I'm watching this, and I'm watching this carefully. And so it comes to the final episode of the second season of Unidentified, which is now maybe a month, 6 months, 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. And I knew that was going to be it for this year. There wasn't going to be a third one this year. That was done. They were done. And it was phenomenal. Why? Well, first and foremost, and I was astounded. My jaw dropped when I realized what they were doing. And if people haven't watched this 8th episode, they need to go find it. I mean, go get it. History Channel, Daily Motion, YouTube, wherever the hell you can find it. This show was devoted to encounters of the phenomena, as in ETs, as in missing time. Of course, all by military people. In other words, they brought contact right in to their agenda. Now, that's significant because, one, it's a message to all the researchers and the activists who came before them, and to all the contactees out there. Look, we may have acted like we just arrived on the scene and nobody knew what was going on, and we just brought this all out, and oh man, now everybody knows there's something going on. No. They stand on the shoulders of thousands of researchers and activists and genre journalists. And it's just like we're going to ignore the contact phenomena, even though that is not the way you're going to get the journalists clamoring and calling you up. It's not the way you're going to get the committees to take those meetings. But they'd already established all that. They'd already gotten the journalists. They'd already had the meetings. And so they felt comfortable enough to bring the contact aspect of this, which is the most controversial of all. And I assure you, will be secondary or tertiary to the next agenda that's coming. It's not going to be first and foremost. But that made a clear statement. Hey guys, we understand. We know the big picture. We know a lot more that we can talk about, and we're letting the contactees know we haven't forgot about you either. Now this was very significant. But then something else happened that I need to read this if you'll indulge me. Here's the Christopher Mellon statement. I think I'm about to get them both. Okay. Here's what now remember, Christopher Mellon is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Intelligence for Defense, right? He's the political guy. He's the one that's orchestrating all of the political side of this, by and large. And he's, very highly respected guy with huge credentials. So here's what he says. This is his last remarks, ending the second season of Identified. We probably won't hear from him again in any meaningful way until next year. He says the phenomena is real. These are not Russian, U.S., or Chinese vehicles. If there is another intelligence from another system, which is vastly more advanced and sophisticated than we are, and we are able to establish contact and communication, it would be the equivalent of possibly gaining hundreds of thousands or millions of years of knowledge in days or weeks.
That doesn't sound like his view. That sounds like a written, well-prepared statement, if you ask me. It sounds like something that they've had planned to release, and they double-checked exactly word for word what it was that they're saying to make sure it's properly languaged to the masses.
Oh, you can be sure that was absolutely planned. That is, these were selected closing remarks that he is going to give on camera to wrap up that season, right? And so these are more important.
You have one of the pages.
I am trying to close out. I opened up all these files, and one of them has got sound. I'm about to get rid of it. I'm closing in on it right now. Hang on.
This is the first another show on the show. There you go.
There we go. Hey, look, I'm not. If you watch the news, we're not the only ones having trouble. They because of all the in-home stuff they have to do. Even the news organizations are constantly having issues with their hosts coming in. So we're not alone in that regard. I'm going to get rid of this.
We are using Skype and Microsoft technologies.
I'm almost there. This could be, that's Elizondo. Here's two more. Here we go. Got to be closed out pretty soon. Got it. Okay, now.
There we go. Silence.
As I say, I told you at the beginning of the show, did I not say that my cognitive matrix.
You're Joe Biden me out there, Brenda. Don't go Joe Biden on me.
Yeah, I'm heavily pixelated here. Okay, now here is something even more important. This is the closing remarks from Elizondo. All right. Here's what he says. What does it mean for us if we are presented one day with the fact that there are others with a capital O out there? Does it mean we are not as special anymore? Or does it mean that we have brothers and sisters that now we should start a new journey with? I think there is magic in that. It's wondrous to think that the greater cosmos, billions and billions of light years with billions and trillions of stars and planets, that we are all part of this interesting cosmic neighborhood. Wouldn't it be amazing? Maybe we will be more human. Maybe we will learn to be more than human. If we have a chance to learn from something else, and therefore our definition of being human is expanded. Now, again, these are the two key people in the TTSA. These are the two most important people, period. Elizondo is pretty much handling the witness development, and Mellon is handling the connections to the Congress. And both of these statements do not have the concept of threat anywhere in them. In fact, they sound like some of my New Age colleagues, right? They talk about the ascension and beings of light and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying that they've gone that far. They haven't. But these two comments, which I believe they felt comfortable in giving because they'd already established everything they needed in terms of where they're going next year, all right? So that it wasn't like members of Congress going to read that and go, oh my God, these are a bunch of New Age hippies trying to get up here in a hill. No, this was a message to the rest of us. Mm-hmm. Remember, the show that they closed out on was about encounters with the phenomena by implying abduction. They didn't use the word abduction. No, I get that. By military people. And now these comments, they're basically saying, look, don't worry about the threat thing. That's not where we're going. That is going to be part of what's coming. Yes, it has to be considered. It will be viewed, but we're not going to be up pounding the committee tables with our shoes, demanding that the Space Force get an extra $2 trillion so we can defend ourselves against the evil aliens. This is incredibly significant. It shows where they are. Now, I always knew that was where they were from the beginning. I didn't have any doubts about that. But nevertheless, what they were saying was clearly putting that in the minds of a lot of people. And as you know, Angel, a lot of people out there have blogged about this. They have tweeted about this. Man, threat. What's going on? So that was very significant. And so to final, another one of my short answers. I believe here is what's about to happen. Now, it's not locked in. There are some circumstances that might delay it. All right, for a short period of time or a long period of time. Something major, you know how history plays with us. You got all your plans together, and then something awful happens. If we start sinking the Chinese and the U.S. start sinking each other's ships in the South China Sea, this is not going to go like I think it's going to go. Okay, that's going to push it off. All right, but barring that, and there will be there's a variety of possibilities based upon certain political outcomes. Now, I'll talk about that. But the game plan is simple this. After the election, circumstances are appropriate, they're going to start hearings immediately on the ET issue, the real deal, the ones we've tried to get for forever, for decades. Many attempts have been made, all failed. We haven't had a hearing since 1968, a half century ago. And there's a good reason why we didn't have those hearings, right? They didn't want them because hearings of high quality with the real deal hearings, not the one day 68 thing. It blows the truth embargo up, but we're going to get them. Yeah. And these hearings are going to be filled with military witnesses that they have been collecting for a year and a half. Elizondo has been the key there. He's talking to them. He's going out and you could say recruiting them, but certainly giving them a picture of what to expect. And how many they'll have come next year, it will be a lot. Enough to hold multiple, it will be multiple hearings. There are quite a few committees on the Hill that would want a piece of this. Armed Services Committee, Intelligence Committee, and so forth. There are quite a few. And so there will be multiple hearings, and they will start, I believe, in late February of next year. And once those hearings get underway, they will be watched by hundreds of millions of people around the world. 75 million people just watched the last presidential debate. That's nothing compared to how many people will watch these hearings. All right. And once those hearings get underway, disclosure is inevitable and soon. And why is this make sense? I always knew that the road to disclosure, unless it was by an authoritative head of state like Putin or Xi Jinping, had to go through, if it's U.S., had to go through hearings. It was not going to be a good idea for the president to surprise everybody.
Right.
Just one day, oh yeah, guess what?
Aliens are real.
Yeah, just turn up one day and yeah, by the way, ETs are here. Thank you. I got to go to dinner. No, because it's so much more appropriate. First of all, it involves the Congress, so the Congress gets a piece of the action, right? It takes over a number of weeks, and so hundreds of millions of people are going to watch this, and you're going to see the evidence unfolding under oath in front of committees. I held a citizen hearing on disclosure to give Congress an idea what it was like. I don't know if that had much impact, but the point is that was why I did it. And of course, other people have tried to get hearings. There have been a number of attempts, all blocked. But of course, those attempts did not involve former members of the DOD and the DIA and the CIA and everybody else. They weren't the TTSA. And so once this goes on for weeks, then the evidence just mounts. Now we already know there's enough evidence to prove the ET presence. But that's not the same thing as the right circumstances and evidence to literally convince the entire planet, right? Most of the planet. Right. That evidence will turn up under oath in these hearings over weeks until everybody goes, yeah, pretty much, obviously. I mean, I always knew it, but there you go. And so then the leadership of Congress meets with administration, the White House people and DOD people. They all come together and they sit and they look at each other and go, well, I think it's pretty clear the evidence from all these fine military witnesses pretty much confirms that this is an extraterrestrial related phenomena. And so I think, given that, I think it's time that the president announce that that is in fact the case. So the president can then make the announcement. That's the disclosure event, not the hearing.
Right.
But anybody going to get excited? Anybody going to jump off the building? Or no? Everybody wins. The people win. The Congress wins. The White House wins. The DOD wins. Everybody wins. This is what is going to happen. And I think it's going to start in February. And we could have disclosure by April or sooner. Now, I feel very strongly about this. Now, aside from a mile-wide meteor landing in the Pacific or war with China, something like that, there is.
Well, after what we've had in the last year, that wouldn't be too far-fetched.
Anything is possible. No, I know. Let me tell you. So for that reason, you don't put any money on it, or you don't totally change your plans. But there are four fundamental political outcomes that we'll be looking at come January 20 of next year. Now, there are a few others that could happen, but they're pretty low percentage. These are the four most likely. It's pretty simple. Biden wins the presidency. The Democrats win the Senate. Biden wins the presidency. The Democrats do not get the Senate. Trump wins the presidency, and the GOP keeps the Senate. Trump wins the presidency, and the GOP loses the Senate. Now, every one of those is a very different political situation come January 21. And so depending upon which of those happens is going to significantly affect the prospects of those hearings getting underway immediately as opposed to a little later, as opposed to a lot later. I'm not smart enough to be able to measure that out. But
do you think do you think some of that would get lost maybe in some of the stuff that William Barr's covering with the the collusion that actually, they're now going into. They'd say Hillary was involved in the fake dossier and all that stuff. Do you think that might also interfere in some of the disclosure from happening at the timetable of the 8th of April?
It's a good point. Look, let me put it this way. No matter which of those four scenarios takes place, next year it has the potential to have more than enough. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh man, more than enough extreme
momentum,
partisan foo-fa. Okay.
Or momentum, really going into
civil lawsuits, indictments, cases, this, that, all kinds of stuff. I mean, look, the potential is there for any amount of that, depending upon circumstances. But believe me, there's going to be a lot of it either way. Now,
definitely.
But that said, right, the truth is that the American people are tired of that. They're tired of all of it. All right. We've been through it. Right. And so it's not like, oh, gee, we can't wait for more lawsuits, more gridlock, more closing the government down, more lawsuits, all this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean it won't happen, but the American people are tired of it. And the politicians know it. They know that while they're almost compelled to go to war, whatever the outcome, they also know the American people are sick of that war. And so for them, it's like, I got to do it, but boy, it's going to be expensive. We're going to pay a price. Now, here's what the hearings do. Guess what? Whatever's going on, how many lawsuits have been filed, how many indictments have gone on, how many new investigations have been opened, if those hearings take place, they will be shoved in the background. The American people will be going, yeah, I understand somebody did that and somebody indicted there, whatever, and but look. Military witnesses are giving us the goods filing on the ET reality. We may get confirmation it's true. And so disclosure not only gives the American people a huge break in which, my God, now we can learn about something powerful and important and new that has all kinds of future possibilities. We can look to the future and not be constantly going over all the alleged crimes that both sides have done going back 20 years, right? So in that sense, the people will embrace it, meaning, this is what I want to look at. But then it also provides cover for these other things to kind of be sorted out without too much damage to both parties, right? In other words, you and him fight, but go off in a back room somewhere, beat the hell out of each other. I got something I'm watching here. So in that sense, it's also a win in a lot of other ways. So again, when I run it all through the equation, I run all the equations, they keep coming up, barring something profound happening, with the hearings have to happen. Now, there are other reasons why they need to get those hearings done. And by the way, this assumes, I believe correctly, that there are now quite a few people in the DOD, in the military intelligence complex in general, and on the Hill that want this to happen now. They want it to happen. They're not fighting it. Rubio puts that section into the Defense Intelligence Appropriations Bill. Out the ONI, which is basically a front thing that was done for PR. It doesn't matter. Saying we're going to get the documents. We need to have them by 180 days from the passage of the bill. I think the bill just got signed, rather. That puts the quote deadline for delivering that material around mid-March, which would be about well into the hearings that I'm talking about. Rather convenient. Also, you may have noticed that suddenly we're getting more stuff out of NASA about this and that. The old drip that we've been talking about for years. Water here, water there, here, there. Microbes are growing on the outside of the International Space Station. We just confirmed panspermia is real. And then just recently, phosphine gas in the Venus atmosphere. And then they make this very interesting statement in the summation. They say, we cannot find any abiotic pathways for this gas to be there. Now, the average person hasn't a clue what the hell abiotic pathway means, but you know what it means. And one of the articles knew what it means, so they simply put it in the article. They said there's no other way except life that can generate that. That's a big deal. Created a lot of press, didn't it? Okay. So here's my take on that. For decades now, because it was necessary, the scientific community, primarily NASA, maybe the group out of Stanford, what's that? Escapes my mind right now, but it's the one that was involved in Mars. They have been dropping. No, it's the program that ran the Mars missions, the photographs and everything. In any event, they have been dropping these breadcrumbs for a couple of reasons. One, they don't want to act like they're not. They don't have any interest in the life issue, ET issue, life issue. On the other hand, they don't want to set off any fireworks. They don't want to get carried away. But so that's a way to kind of acclimate people to the prospect and the idea of intelligent life, maybe ancient, dead now, but once whatever. And also to cover their butts so they can show, hey, we were looking, we saw, we told you about stuff, right? Oh yeah, it turns out ET's have been here forever, but we were doing something. It's a PR move, and it's an acclamation move. Okay, and it was a slow drip because hey, disclosure was way off in the future, and we're just doing our thing. And we commented about that. They would never admit it. Guess what's happening now? The disclosure process is now speeded up and gotten up close, and they're in the reverse position. Instead of a slow drip as things stretch out, they are now having to catch up because disclosure is coming, and they need to look a little stronger. In other words, this process needs to speed up, guys. And so, boom, phosphine gas. Okay, interesting timing. Mm-hmm. Now, I was thinking about that, and I'm thinking, okay, if they're going to catch up, they're going to have to do better than phosphine gas. Okay. If we're going to have hearings about ETs and nuclear weapons tampering and, Tic Tacs flying all over the damn space and flying rings around our F-18s, they're going to have to do better than that. And I'm thinking, what would be the next thing that would be not too much, but really strong? Well, as it happens, right now, there is a new Mars rover called Perseverance on its way to Mars. Yeah. Launched it in July. And guess what? It arrives on Mars in early February, which is about the time that I'm suggesting that you may see the hearings come together next year that Mellon is putting together. And so, okay. And so they got that rover and they haul it out there and they go cruising on out. And wow, as it turns out, within a day or two, they're cruising by this big rock formation, and the camera turns around 4K, high resolution, right? And there is a friggin', there is a friggin' sculpture into the side of that rock, 20 feet high. It looks better than the stuff in Egypt. Bingo, boom. In that instance, they have just confirmed that there was advanced civilization on Mars, but 1 billion years ago, so nothing to be concerned about, folks. But boy, does that raise some hell. And so NASA is like, whoa, big splash. Everybody's excited. Hearings are going on. And the scientific community is looking a little less like dumbasses. Okay, that's my call on that.
And it goes back to a couple of old literature books. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Oh, it goes back to a lot of stuff. Richard Hoagland, of course, will pop a bottle of champagne and dance all over the house.
Definitely.
But I'm thinking, how can this to me would be pretty cool. Now, as you know, they have taken, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of photos of Mars.
Yeah.
Most of
all
which the
blurry.
public's never seen.
Yeah. Yep.
And whether they anticipated this or not, there's people all over the damn planet with really good, photo analysis software that are going through everyone they can get their hands on, right? And they're looking for anything they can find, and they keep putting this stuff up, And most of it is like, but some of it is like, right?
It's something like Google Mars, Stephen, which is hysterical. It's like Google itself is telling you, look, This is
Sure.
what you're giving us, look at it.
When the truth embargo started, we didn't have Google Earth. We didn't have 4K pictures of Mars. We didn't have hundreds of millions of people with photo Adobe Photoshop. We didn't have any of this stuff.
It's our friend in a sense, yeah.
And then every once in a while, they come across in one of these Mars photos where a particular area has been pixelated out.
Yes.
Right. So I'm thinking,
smudge style, and I'm a Photoshop expert, and I get those smudges when I see them, and I use it all the time. So when I see some of these pictures, I'm like, what are they hiding here? And obviously, once it's smudge, you can't tell. But I mean, when I see the smudge, I'm like, that is done on purpose on Photoshop. Why?
So under the slow drip approach they've been doing for years, if they see something that's a slam dunk, it's got to be smudged, right? If it's not a slam dunk, what the hell? Let them have a bone. Plus, but I know there's so many photos. I always wondered if one of them, they just didn't check it well enough, and smoking gun, and some teenager in UK, gets it, blows it up, and bingo. But it hasn't happened. However, but you see, NASA wants to be the one that puts that out, not a teenager in the UK. They want to do it. Can they do it? Well, not recently, but now I think it's time. And so, and don't be surprised if between now and that Perseverance rover landing on Mars, a couple of other things come out. I don't know what the hell they got up their sleeve, but they'll come up with something. There was another announcement just 3 days ago, big finding, giant water reservoirs underneath the polar caps. Huge amounts, okay? They keep putting that in there. Could be life down there, all right? Okay, gonna go look for that. Okay, I'm going. That's another little drip, another breadcrumb. But is it really big enough? No, it's not. But it's something. So I'm going to be interested in all get out what they come up with over the next 5 months until that rover gets there, when they have a chance to really put on a show. So anyway, this is my answer to where are we now.
Steven, we're unfortunately out of time. It's been an hour already. Time flies when you're on. We definitely want to have you back on. I extended a little bit here just to make sure we got through the segment, because I wanted to get to the final point of that answer, and that's exactly a great point to leave it on for the next time I have you on. And hopefully we're a lot closer to the end game on February, where this stuff's going to start coming out. Because again, I truly believe that you're absolutely right. I think February, April is actually a pretty accurate date. In fact, if you go back to my archive, I gave a similar date. I was thinking more maybe along July or June, but April's a fine date for me. I'll say in July because in July 4th, Independence Day, and I thought maybe they'll try to tie it in somehow and make it like a global thing. That was just kind of an idea, but I mean you're right on the money. I think we're right there.
Look, after what the world has just gone through, by the way, and will have gone through by January 20, deaths in the U.S. are going to hit 350,000, which means that the total number of infected, one way or the other, will probably be up in the range of
over 100 million plus, easy 20 million.
Well, 10 times 350,000 is 3.5 million. Have I got that right? Oh, no, the number of confirmed cases is 1 million. Yeah. By then, it'll be probably 1.5 million, which means the number of total cases got infection but not confirmed, meaning didn't get in the hospital, will probably be in the range of 60 million. Right? That's a lot of people dealing with a lot of crap. And that's just our country. All right? And then the economic effects and the unemployment, everything else, it's been hell. All right? And if it was hell for us, do you want to even imagine what it's been like for the Brazilians, the Spaniards, the French, the UK, and don't even talk about China, all right?
Oh, Italy?
And so the world, can you imagine anything that would get the world back together and thinking forward, thinking positive, and thinking, okay, let's fix all this? I mean, have we not earned a hot fudge sundae that big? I think we have.
I think Nancy Pelosi will make it chocolate, and we'll all enjoy it.
Well, hot fudge and chocolate is pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Steven, we gotta go, but I definitely want to make sure the audience knows how to get to you. Let's give out the website address where they can follow everything you're working on, because that's the most important thing, to continuously follow what you're doing.
ParadigmResearchGroup.org.
Yep.
or just put in Paradigm Research Group, 3 words, it comes right up top link. Email me at prg@paradigmresearchgroup.org. My podcast, The Disclosure Wire, is going to launch any day, right? Disclosure Wire podcast, which I'll be broadcasting from Washington here in the National Press Building. And I'll be talking about all these issues and more throughout, the rest of this year and next year. So look for that. It'll be announced all over the place. And I'll be doing a lot of interviews because I've been kind of holding off, wanted to make sure things had gotten to a certain point. So we're now in the last months. Let's have a good time. Let's enjoy and keep in touch. Let's
rock and roll. And if you need any help on any technical stuff coming up, you let me know, man. You know I got your back 100%. You've been a gentleman, and really one of the best friends I've had when it comes to the world of the ufology, the shows, and just personally, I love having you on, man. You're a true gentleman and a scholar, and I truly mean that. Really
I appreciate that. Thank you, Angel. All right, take care, man.
Do me one favor.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Believe me, I'm one of the safest guys in this town because I ain't getting this disease, dude. It ain't gonna happen.
We need you, sir. We need you.
Yeah.
God bless you, and thank you for being here again. And guys, that is the phenomenally great Stephen Bassett, and we're going to be back next week on Thursday with more Inside the Jackal's Head, and right back here on psn-radio.com.